Here we are. Exactly what I inferred would happen a long while ago is finally happening. If you look around, we who have been defending him are not so alone anymore. The media is trying to double up their efforts and hide the fact that the tide is changing. And the people who fed this, well, their judgments are forever called into question. And as more truth comes out, some of them have some explaining to do. Despite the still overwhelming belief that Bill Cosby is a serial rapist, regardless, this was destined to be exposed and fail eventually. Some people are always going to believe he's guilty, and that's just how it goes with these things that hit the news. People listen to what they're told, fall into belief sets, and usually never challenge what they think. Regardless, the entire time, the emperor had no clothes, so to speak. And the media, as powerful as it is not powerful enough to keep the charade going forever. I already said my piece on this many times over, but after the mistrial, some people realized that I did lay this all out already. And so some subscribers left comments asking for an update and a real reporting and explanation on what is happening now. And so to oblige, I'll explain again why the case fell apart. I'll explain why the case is still being retried, even though it should not be retried, and it should not have been in court in the first place. And perhaps more importantly, I'll explain the real, never discussed reasons why people still believe Bill Cosby is guilty anyway, without anything of any substance truly ever being there in the first place. While America at large was rubbing its hands together, expecting the invented boogeyman to go to jail, and as the desperate, struggling, and pathetic mainstream media kept on lying every step of the way, as expected, Cosby going to jail didn't happen. At least this time around. Instead, here's what we did learn. Andrea Constand was the sole Cosby accuser at the time that they managed to push into court unconstitutionally after her case was dropped over a decade ago. Aside from Chloe Goins, who had her case dismissed because she lied and said Cosby assaulted her at an event he did not attend, Constand was the most recent and arguably the strongest case against him. It didn't look good at all. However, what the media hid from everyone was exposed with her case too. And that was that she changed dates and times of previous testimonies retroactively to make them match her phone records. She also went back and changed many details she previously stated on record so that she could cover certain bases when cross-examined. And for all those out there that are still going to mindlessly defend this, she did not just say she was mistaken. Again, she changed details to match phone records and previously submitted information. Logically, some people might consider that deception, but some interesting people consider this an inability to recall factual information or be consistent with information due to rape trauma. And although she was not raped. At any rate, we also learned Constand continued a relationship with Cosby before and after the alleged incident. And like I've already been telling you, Constand still called him repeatedly and accepted favors and invites. I reported all of this to you because it was already on record. So, on paper, according to all the evidence, there is absolutely no indication of a sexual assault. A sexual encounter, yes. A sexual assault, no. There are only multiple instances of blatant deception. Any way you look at it, if tried fairly, anywhere, this case goes up in flames. Well, what about the other accuser allowed to testify, one might ask? Surely she helped the situation, right? Well, no, she didn't. The other accuser, Kelly Johnson, also had major problems with her testimony. Of course, she had no proof either. And the kicker is, the story was extremely weak, and she first reported that it took place in 1990. But she later recanted and testified that it took place in 1996. So, she was also inconsistent, but only off by 4 years, shy of a decade. And her story is Cosby made her take a white pill, and she had no choice but to just take it, and then stayed there to get sexually assaulted. And like so many of them, she also was not raped, but she woke up to Cosby grunting behind her. So he didn't drug her to rape her. He drugged her to apply lotion and force her to masturbate him while she was knocked out. And again, this is the story that she first said happened in 1990, but then updated and changed it to 1996. Yeah. And the crazier part is that people get mad when you tell them this. Like, these are the facts. This is the allegation. In a perfect world, none of these cases would be in court. And that is exactly why Andrea Constand was dropped the first time, over a decade ago. In a more sensible alternate universe, this would be over and done. I warned long ago that we are in an age of great deception, and this is but one of many instances revealing to you that agendas are amiss, and you should never trust the media. This was a dark point for American journalism, the justice system, and society. The public was led by the hand. Go search around and spot them out. All the reporters, journalists, talk show hosts, and writers who have been going in on Bill Cosby should never be trusted ever again about anything. They're not anointed with any wisdom to communicate with you. They're owned by entities controlling them and telling them what to do. And many of them are tools who are just a part of the matrix. The mechanisms, schemes, and programs against Cosby are even worse than a lot of people realize. For example, Bill Cosby is obviously an African American icon. And strangely, very early on, there were certain quote-unquote black media outlets like BET.com and The Root, for example, that were very aggressive and outspoken against Bill Cosby very early on, perhaps too early. Now, the reasons for this is theoretical, not fact, but theory according to logic. Firstly, these outlets are not really owned and operated by any black people. They cater to black audiences, but many of them still obey the agendas that corporate American media dictate to them. And much of American media isn't about information. It's about indoctrination. And because Cosby is an African American icon, many alternative journalists feel these media outlets were co-opted with certain agendas. Agendas including anti-Cosby rhetoric to indoctrinate and remove much of Cosby's perceived base. Using logic, here's how you know. Due to the country's history of falsely accusing black males of rape, guilty or not too many genuine black media outlets would ever publicly take the stance of guilt and condemnation when there was never any evidence to ever confirm anything. Even if his guilt was believed, it just wouldn't be in good taste when you consider the sentiments of the demographic. Also, this isn't a small fish. This is a cultural icon. It just wouldn't be wise for a black media site to champion unsubstantiated claims, thus helping to destroy his legacy. For example, why would a periodical that caters to, say, Chinese Americans go in on Bruce Lee and slander him if something came up on him, also for which no proof was provided? The answer is they probably wouldn't. The audience wouldn't like it. In the case of Cosby, normally it should have been those outlets that noticed, wait a minute, something isn't right here. We're moving a little quick, and perhaps we don't know everything yet. Or maybe we should give him a fair trial and reserve judgment. That's not what happened. On very limited to no information, no proof, no evidence, they zealously joined the lynch mob. That let you know It's all controlled information. And some of the writers on those publications that did this are either confused or serving other agendas, whether they realize it or not. But the people spearheading these outlets probably didn't care about the demographic. They were most probably resolved to indoctrinate the demographic with more talking points and rhetoric. Don't confuse yourself. The people who run all media are few. Now, when you also consider the fact that several quote-unquote black institutions of higher learning that Cosby even donated to for years were so quick to snatch his honorary degrees away, even as he proclaimed his innocence, and as they should have had more loyalty to him, and they had no grounds to do so, you don't need one of their degrees to figure this out. You can see exactly what's going on here. All of this is assisted from above. Doesn't matter. Do what you will. There is nothing that will be done in the cover of darkness that won't eventually come to light. I say again, no matter what happens from here on in, history is going to look back at this very differently. In the court of American misguided public opinion, Bill Cosby is one of history's most prolific serial rapists, convicted only by the court of public opinion, without any proof or evidence whatsoever. But in the court of poetic justice, logic, and reason, however, Bill Cosby has already been vindicated, but victimized and set upon by a bunch of assembled accusers who did not have any proof or evidence, could not keep their story straight, did not initially go through the court system, and had a documented financial motive. Still, lies, inconsistencies, shady past, and all were just given the benefit of the doubt anyway. Believe the women over innocence until proven guilt. Incredible. Bill Cosby is probably the most slandered and punished fallen celebrity in the world without a proven crime. It is clear America screwed this up badly and keeps digging the ditch. The powers that be in this situation tried to pull off an agenda, and more people can see it now. And more people are becoming bold enough to say so. And more people will continue to see this for what it is as time goes on. The fog is clearing. And when it smacks you right in the face, and you realize you've been in the clouds and on the wrong side of history about this and a number of things, people are going to have to start re-evaluating who is redirecting their energy. And who or what do they keep putting their faith in? All of this asks a greater question. Why are we still here? Why is the prosecution still resolved to hunt and pursue Bill Cosby, even though these cases keep falling apart in court? And more people are realizing something isn't adding up. For any of the accusers, you can see right through this. Out of over 60 women, there isn't one where you could say, okay, yes, he did that. No, there's reasonable doubt for all the cases. The lot of them ridden with lies and or inconsistencies, swapped out details, colluding with lawyers before any law enforcement, some with shady pasts, some with financial motive, and the list goes on and on. The big to-do is only the fact that there's over 60 women saying things. That's it. As the saying goes, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. And there's more questions. What the media is not reporting is that several of these accusers tried to push cases through and they were all dismissed. So the question is, why are new cases that are no better than the previous still being allowed into court? All with weak, inconsistent details, most decades past the statutes of limitations, and no evidence. It's almost as if they're playing games with the legal system, knowing that they don't have anything concrete, but maybe something might stick, hoping maybe one will get through so that it validates the rest. Why does the system keep bending and breaking all of the rules for this? There are many reasons that I won't go into, but one of them definitely is the powers that be want to save face and keep this illusion intact because its failure exposes what they tried to do, and it exposes too much about our system. Many people tied to this wanted money. Others, even higher on the totem pole, wanted the destruction of his name and legacy, and they're able to keep this up for a little longer. Many people still believe he's guilty, even though in reality there was never anything there to warrant any of this. This was a very deliberated, strategically designed sham, and mainstream media that was commissioned into this from day one will just keep slandering him and keep on trying to convince you that he's guilty. All the stories they keep pushing out are grossly inaccurate and repulsive, horrible, opinionated journalism. And that leads me to the explanation of the problem. So let's recap again. In what has now been years of a witch hunt, which entailed normalized slandering of Bill Cosby, things finally came down to facing off with two accusers in court. But it was anticlimactic. The two accusers who faced him in court were the best options to face him according to what was legally allowable, and they both came up duds. For example, Constand initially told law enforcement that she didn't contact Mr. Cosby after the incident, when turns out she did, including a cute call to him on Valentine's Day, the Valentine's Day after the alleged incident. Both accusers said multiple things on record that were not true. Both adjusted their inconsistencies and claimed fogginess due to trauma. In response to this, the U.S. courts, compromised by an agenda, are now doing exactly what the media did. Instead of them saying, well, there are statements on record that don't check out for not just one, but for both of them. And so, obviously, there is too much reasonable doubt here. We can't run with this. No, they're instead basically saying, well, we know he's guilty, so why don't you go back to coaching again, fix your problematic stories, and come on back. We'll get him next time. For a hell of a lot of money at the expense of the taxpayers. And oh yeah, Cosby is the only one from Montgomery County. The other two women don't live there. So this isn't even in the interest of any Montgomery County residents. It's against one. This has gone on for a long time, but people are finally seeing and hearing the truth about how very strange and absurd all of this is. Now, let me let you in on a little secret. And it's how this scheme was able to work for so long. The secret? The only Pac-Man-esque power pellet, if you will, the accusers have is each other's allegation. It's the glue keeping this whole sham intact. And there you go. And anytime you pull up one case by itself, any one of them, it is clearly not credible on its own. And the magic of this spell is that people can see that. And anytime one gets shot down, people accept, yeah, that one went down, but they just assume in their mind that there's plenty others that do check out. Well, yeah, okay, then, well, who? Who? Which one? In the first 3-part series I did on Cosby, I saw what was going on and attempted to expose the situation for what it is. In this new series, I'm moving toward a different angle. I'll recap the many ways these cases have fallen apart, plain as day, but we'll explore, expose, and explain the many reasons why the public at large still thinks Bill Cosby is guilty anyway. Please stay tuned for part 2. Also, it's not easy to crank these out, and I'm trying my best to keep it coming for you guys. And so I've recently joined the Patreon wave. For those that would like to support the channel, please visit the PayPal link for a one-time donation, or please support via Patreon using the Patreon information provided below.